Yeah.
Who loves you, baby? If you recognize that catchphrase, you're about to take a nostalgic trip back to one of the coolest cop shows of the 1970s. Kojak wasn't just another detective series. It was a cultural phenomenon that made lollipops intimidating and baldness the height of cool. Telly Savalas became an unlikely sex symbol while playing a tough New York detective who solved crimes with style and swagger. But behind the scenes of this iconic show, there were some absolutely bizarre stories that most fans have never heard. From stolen props to improvised catchphrases, from family drama to near-death experiences on set, Kojak had more weird moments happening off-camera than on it. So grab your favorite lollipop, settle in, and let's dive into 20 strange facts about Kojak that'll make you see this classic show in a completely different light. Weird fact number 1, the lollipop was never in the original script. Here's something that'll blow your mind. That iconic lollipop that became Kojak's signature prop was never actually written into the show. Telly Savalas had recently quit smoking and was struggling with the urge to light up during filming. Between takes, he'd pop a lollipop in his mouth as a substitute for cigarettes. And during one particular scene, he forgot to take it out before the cameras rolled. The director liked the look so much that he kept it in, and suddenly Kojak had his trademark. What makes this even weirder is that Savalas initially hated the idea of making it a permanent thing. He thought it made his tough detective look ridiculous and childish, but test audiences absolutely loved it. The network received hundreds of letters from fans asking about that detective with the lollipop, so the producers insisted it stay. Savalas eventually embraced it, but he had some strict rules. The lollipop had to be a Tootsie Pop, and it always had to be cherry or grape flavored because they photographed better on camera. The prop department had to keep hundreds of them on hand at all times, and by the end of the series, Savalas estimated he'd gone through over 10,000 lollipops during filming. Tootsie Roll Industries never paid a dime for the product placement, but their sales skyrocketed by 40% during the show's run.
Please.
Weird fact number 2. Kojak was based on a real murder case that sent innocent men to prison. Most people don't know that Kojak started as a made-for-TV movie called The Marcus Nelson Murders, which was based on one of the most controversial cases in New York criminal history. In 1963, 2 young black men named George Whitmore Jr. were falsely accused and convicted of the brutal career girls' murders in Manhattan. Whitmore was coerced into signing a false confession after 22 hours of interrogation without a lawyer, and he spent years in prison for crimes he didn't commit. The case exposed massive corruption in the NYPD and led to major reforms in how confessions were obtained. What's really strange is that the TV movie took significant liberties with the actual story, making the detective the hero who solves everything, when in reality it was investigative journalists and civil rights lawyers who exposed the truth. Telly Savalas played the detective in that original movie, and it was so successful that CBS decided to build an entire series around the character. However, they completely divorced Kojak from the real-world implications and turned it into a standard procedural where the cops were always right. George Whitmore Jr. was eventually exonerated in 1973, the exact same year Kojak premiered, but the show never acknowledged the real story again. Even more bizarre, Whitmore tried to sue the network for using his story without compensation, but lost the case because of how much they had fictionalized it. Weird fact number 3. Telly Savalas' brother played Detective Stavros, and they fought constantly. Family dynamics on set can get complicated, but Kojak took it to another level. George Savalas, Telly's younger brother, played Detective Stavros throughout the series, and the 2 brothers had a notoriously rocky relationship behind the scenes. George had been trying to make it as an actor for years with little success, and he was convinced that Telly only got him the role out of obligation rather than talent. This created massive resentment, and they'd often get into screaming matches in their shared dressing room. The crew nicknamed their arguments the Greek tragedy hour because both brothers would start yelling in Greek when they really got heated. What makes this situation even stranger is that Telly actually did fight to get George the role, but not out of nepotism. He genuinely believed his brother was perfect for the part, and that having real familial chemistry would translate on screen. The producers were initially against it, worried about the exact problems that ended up happening. There were multiple episodes where they refused to film scenes together, and the director had to shoot their conversations separately and edit them together. Despite all the conflict, George appeared in 118 episodes, making him one of the most frequently appearing supporting characters. In interviews years later, George admitted he regretted how he treated Telly during filming, saying his own insecurity ruined what should have been a special experience working with his brother. Weird fact number 4. Who Loves Ya Baby was completely improvised and almost cut.
Yeah, that's much better. You'll like.
The most famous catchphrase in Kojak history wasn't written by any screenwriter. Telly Savalas just blurted it out during filming of the 3rd episode. The scene called for Kojak to comfort a witness, and Savalas was supposed to say something generic like, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you." Instead, he looked at the actress, gave her that famous Kojak smile, and said, "Who loves you, baby?" Completely off script. The director yelled cut and asked what the hell that was supposed to mean. And Savalas explained it was something his grandmother used to say to him as a kid in Greek. Roughly translated, the producers watched the dailies and initially wanted to dub over it with the scripted line because they thought it sounded too informal and unprofessional for a detective. But Savalas fought hard to keep it, arguing that Kojak needed a signature phrase that made him different from every other TV detective. They compromised by keeping it in that one episode to test audience reaction, and the response was overwhelming. People loved it. What's really weird is that Savalas's grandmother never actually said those exact words in English. He admitted years later that he'd adapted a Greek expression of endearment and given it his own spin because it sounded cool. By the 2nd season, the writers were deliberately creating moments for Kojak to say the phrase, and it appeared in almost every episode, usually multiple times.
Yay. You got the hooks for that, pussycat?
Who loves you, baby?
Okay.
Weird fact number 5. Telly Savalas was nearly killed by a stunt car. During filming. During the 2nd season, there was an incident that almost ended the series permanently. They were filming a chase sequence in Manhattan, where Kojak's car was supposed to narrowly miss being hit by a speeding vehicle. The stunt was planned down to the second, with Telly Savalas standing on a marked spot, while the stunt car would pass exactly 3 feet away from him. What nobody knew was that the stunt driver had been drinking during lunch break and misjudged the distance. The car came within inches of hitting Savalas, close enough that it tore his jacket, and he could feel the heat from the engine. He dove out of the way at the last second, rolling onto the pavement and scraping up his face and hands pretty badly. The stunt driver was immediately fired and never worked in Hollywood again, but the damage was done. Savalas refused to do any scenes involving moving vehicles for the next 6 episodes, which created huge production problems since car chases were a staple of the show. The producers had to completely rewrite multiple scripts, focusing more on interrogation room scenes and foot chases instead. What's even more bizarre is that Savalas developed a superstition about that particular filming location and refused to ever shoot there again. They had to avoid an entire 4-block radius in Manhattan for the rest of the series, which was actually prime real estate for getting authentic New York street shots. Weird fact number 6. The show's budget was so tight. They reused the same car explosion 17 times. Here's a behind-the-scenes secret that'll change how you watch the show. If you look carefully across different episodes, you'll notice the same car explosion happening over and over again. The production budget for Kojak was actually pretty modest compared to other crime dramas of the era, and explosions were expensive as hell to film. So the special effects team shot one really good car explosion during the 1st season with multiple cameras from different angles, and then they just kept reusing that footage throughout the entire series run. They'd edit it into different episodes, sometimes flipping the image or changing the color timing to make it look different, but it was the same explosion every single time. Sharp-eyed fans started noticing this by the 3rd season and would send letters to the network pointing out the repeated footage. The producers had to release a statement claiming it was an homage to classic filmmaking techniques, which was complete nonsense. The truth came out years later when one of the editors admitted they'd been ordered to stretch every dollar as far as possible. What makes this even funnier is that the explosion became so iconic that when they finally had budget for a new explosion in season 4, test audiences complained it didn't look right. They ended up going back to using the original explosion for consistency, turning a cost-cutting measure into an actual creative choice. Weird fact number 7. Telly Savalas recorded a #1 hit single while filming the show. In 1975, right in the middle of Kojak's peak popularity, Telly Savalas decided to pursue a music career, and somehow it actually worked. He recorded a spoken-word version of the Bread song, If, that became a massive hit in the UK, reaching #1 on the charts and staying there for 2 weeks. But here's the weird part. Savalas couldn't actually sing in any traditional sense. He just spoke the lyrics in that distinctive gravelly voice while music played underneath, essentially doing poetry over a backing track. The recording session was bizarre, according to everyone who was there. Savalas showed up in full Kojak costume, including the lollipop, because he'd come straight from the set and didn't want to waste time changing. He refused to do more than 2 takes of anything, saying that if he couldn't get it right twice, it wasn't worth recording. The whole album was finished in less than 4 hours. What makes this even stranger is that the success of the single actually caused problems with the TV show's production schedule. Savalas had to fly to England for promotional appearances and performances on British television, which meant they had to shut down filming for 2 weeks. The producers were furious and tried to sue him for breach of contract, but Savalas' contract technically didn't prevent him from pursuing outside projects during hiatus. The lawsuit was dropped, but it created tensions that lasted for months. Weird fact number 8. The famous Kojak suit was stolen. 3 times by obsessed fans. Telly Savalas had a specific tan-colored suit that Kojak wore in the opening credits and in promotional materials. It became so iconic that it was essentially a character itself. That original suit was stolen from the wardrobe department not once, not twice, but 3 separate times during the show's run. The first theft happened during season 2, when someone broke into the studio lot and made off with half the wardrobe trailer, including Kojak's signature suit. They had to quickly make a replacement, but Savalas claimed it never felt the same, and that the fit was slightly off for the rest of the season. The second theft was even weirder. It was taken during a location shoot in New York, when the costume trailer was left unlocked during lunch. Security footage showed a woman in her 60s casually walking in, taking the suit off its hanger, folding it neatly, and walking out like she owned the place. She was never caught. The third theft was an inside job. A production assistant who'd been with the show for 3 years took the suit on the series' final week of filming, claiming he wanted a souvenir. He was caught because he was stupid enough to wear it to a Kojak-themed party, and someone recognized it and reported him. The suit was recovered, and he was fired but never prosecuted because the show was ending anyway, and nobody wanted the bad publicity. Weird fact number 9. Kevin Dobson was cast as Crocker because he lost a bar fight. Kevin Dobson, who played Detective Bobby Crocker and became Kojak's main partner after the first season, got the role through the strangest casting story in television history. He was a struggling actor in New York who happened to be in the wrong bar at the wrong time when a fight broke out. Dobson tried to break it up and ended up getting punched in the face, giving him a black eye and split lip. He had an audition for Kojak scheduled the next day and almost canceled because of his injuries, but his agent convinced him to go anyway. When he walked into the audition room looking beat up, the casting director immediately said, "That's our guy." They'd been looking for someone who could play Crocker as tough and street smart, and Dobson's genuine injuries gave him an authenticity they hadn't seen in any of the other actors who auditioned. What's really weird is that Dobson didn't even read for the part. They just hired him on the spot based on his appearance. He found out later that over 200 actors had auditioned for the role before him, including several well-known names. But none of them had the look the producers wanted. Dobson and Savalas became genuine friends off-screen, which wasn't always the case with Savalas and his co-stars. They'd go out for drinks after filming, and Savalas became a mentor to the younger actor, giving him advice about negotiating contracts and handling fame. Weird fact number 10. The show was almost canceled after 6 episodes because of the bald head. This is going to sound insane, but CBS executives seriously considered pulling Kojak off the air after just 6 episodes because they were worried that Telly Savalas' bald head was too jarring for American audiences. In the early 70s, almost every male TV star had a full head of hair. It was considered essential for a leading man. Network research departments had conducted studies suggesting that bald men tested poorly with female viewers aged 18 to 34, which was a key demographic for advertisers. The executives called several emergency meetings where they seriously discussed options like having Savalas wear a toupee or recasting the role entirely. Savalas heard about these discussions and went ballistic, threatening to quit and sue the network if they tried to make him wear a hairpiece. He gave an impassioned speech about how his baldness made Kojak unique, and that trying to cover it up would destroy everything that made the character interesting. The producers backed Savalas, and they convinced the network to give the show until the end of the season before making any drastic changes. By episode 12, Kojak was a certified hit, and Suddenly Bald was beautiful. Savalas received thousands of fan letters from bald men, thanking him for making them feel represented on television. The show's success actually changed Hollywood's attitude about leading men and physical appearance, proving that charisma and talent mattered more than conforming to traditional standards of attractiveness. Weird fact. Number 11. A real man. Sept Enel, P-Dull detective sued the show for stealing his personality. In 1974, a New York detective named Lou Calabrese filed a lawsuit against CBS, claiming that Kojak's entire personality was based on him without permission or compensation. Calabrese had consulted on the original Marcus Nelson movie and spent weeks showing Telly Savalas around Manhattan precincts, explaining how real detectives talked and worked. He claimed that Savalas copied his mannerisms, his way of speaking, even his habit of calling people baby. The lawsuit got pretty ugly, with Calabrese providing depositions from other cops who swore that Kojak was basically Calabrese with a different name. Savalas denied everything, saying he'd developed the character from multiple sources, including his own father. The case dragged on for 18 months before being settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. What's strange is that after the settlement, Calabrese became a regular technical advisor on the show and appeared in several episodes as an extra. He and Savalas reportedly became friendly, with Calabrese later admitting he'd been pushed into the lawsuit by a lawyer friend who saw dollar signs. Weird fact. Number 12. The show's police consultant was actually fired from the NYPD for corruption. Kojak employed Burton Roberts as their main police technical advisor to ensure authenticity, but Roberts had been forced to resign from the NYPD in 1968, following an internal affairs investigation into bribery allegations. He was never formally charged with anything, but the department quietly pushed him out with a resignation instead of termination. The producers either didn't know about his background or didn't care, because Roberts worked on the show for all 5 seasons. What makes this truly bizarre is that Roberts would advise the writers on proper police procedure while simultaneously helping them make cops look squeaky clean and heroic when he himself had been dirty. Other retired cops who worked as extras would complain that Roberts was giving them unrealistic directions, making them act like TV cops instead of real ones. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that a show born from a story about police corruption had a corrupt ex-cop teaching them how to portray honest police work. Roberts defended himself in interviews, claiming his forced resignation was political retaliation, and that he had never done anything wrong, but documents that surfaced years later suggested otherwise.
Yeah.
Weird fact number 13. Telly Savalas insisted on doing his own stunts and broke his arm. Twice. Despite the near-death experience with the stunt car, Savalas refused to use a stunt double for most physical scenes, insisting that audiences could always tell when it wasn't really the actor. This decision led to him breaking his right arm during a fight scene in season 3 and then breaking it again in almost the exact same place during season 4. The first break happened when he threw a punch at a breakaway door that didn't break away properly, and his momentum carried him into the solid door frame. He finished filming the scene before going to the hospital, and you can actually see him cradling his arm strangely in the final cut. They had to write his arm cast into several episodes, with dialogue explaining that Kojak had injured it chasing a suspect. The second break was even more stupid. He insisted on jumping from a fire escape platform onto a car roof, misjudged the landing, and put his arm out to catch himself. The producers finally put their foot down and forced him to use stunt doubles for anything more dangerous than running, but Savalas would complain about it constantly. Weird fact number 14. The Kojak lollipop caused the choking hazard scandal. By 1975, Kojak was so popular with kids that they all wanted to imitate him by walking around with lollipops. This led to a significant increase in choking incidents among children who would try to talk with lollipops in their mouths, like their hero did on TV. Several parent groups and safety organizations called for CBS to have Kojak stop using the lollipop, citing dozens of emergency room visits. The network was in a bind because the lollipop had become absolutely integral to the character's identity, but they also didn't want the bad publicity of kids getting hurt. Their solution was bizarre. They created public service announcements featuring Telly Savalas as Kojak, telling kids that the lollipop was for grown-ups only and that children should never walk around with anything in their mouths. These PSAs aired during Saturday morning cartoons, which was ironic since the show itself aired at night and wasn't intended for children anyway. Tootsie Roll Industries also got involved, printing warning labels on their products. The whole situation was absurd because nobody had anticipated that a gritty cop show would become popular with elementary school kids. But Kojak's cool factor transcended age demographics. Weird fact number 15. 5 different actors played Kojak's boss and they all quit. The role of Kojak's superior officer was cursed. 5 different actors cycled through the part over 5 seasons, and every single one of them requested to leave the show. The first actor, Dan Fraser, who played Captain Frank McNeil, lasted the longest, but constantly complained that his character had nothing to do except yell at Kojak and approve warrants. The writers struggled to make the boss character interesting because Kojak was such a dominant personality that anyone in authority over him seemed either incompetent or unnecessary. Each new actor would start with big ideas about how to make the role compelling, but within months, they'd realize they were just furniture in Kojak's world. The 5th and final actor actually lasted only 11 episodes before his agent negotiated a release from his contract, claiming the role was damaging his career prospects. The producers joked about just having Kojak report directly to the mayor and eliminating the boss character entirely. Behind the scenes, Savalas reportedly didn't help the situation because he'd rewrite scenes to give himself more dialogue and cut his superiors' lines, believing audiences tuned in to see Kojak, not his boss. Weird fact number 16. The theme music was plagiarized and the show got sued. The iconic Kojak theme music that everyone remembers was composed by Billy Goldenberg. But in 1976, a Greek musician named Dimitri Papadopoulos claimed it was stolen from a traditional Greek folk melody he'd recorded in 1968. He filed a lawsuit with side-by-side musical analysis showing remarkable similarities between his recording and the Kojak theme. The case was complicated because Goldenberg admitted he'd been inspired by Greek music, given that Kojak was Greek-American, but claimed his composition was original. Music experts testified for both sides, with some saying the melodies were basically identical, and others saying the similarities were coincidental, given that both drew from the same traditional Greek musical scales and structures. The lawsuit was eventually settled, with Papadopoulos receiving a one-time payment and shared credit on future releases of the theme, though his name never appeared in the show's actual credits. What makes this weirder is that after the settlement, 2 other musicians came forward claiming they should also get credit, but their cases were dismissed as opportunistic attempts to get settlement money. Weird fact number 17. Telly Savalas refused to memorize lines and use cue cards for everything. Here's something that shocked the cast and crew. Telly Savalas almost never memorized his dialogue, and instead relied on cue cards placed around the set. This wasn't because he couldn't memorize lines. He'd been a successful stage actor and could commit entire plays to memory. He just decided at some point that it was a waste of his time and energy when they could simply put the words where he could read them. If you watch Kojak carefully, you'll notice his eyes occasionally dart to the side or up slightly. He's reading his lines. The other actors found this incredibly frustrating because it meant Savalas wasn't really looking at them during scenes, and it made spontaneous improvisation nearly impossible. Kevin Dobson complained about it in interviews years later, saying it felt like acting opposite someone who was reading a teleprompter. The directors had mixed feelings. Some appreciated that Savalas delivered his lines perfectly because he was literally reading them, while others felt it made his performance less authentic. What's truly strange is that, despite using cue cards, Savalas was notorious for changing dialogue anyway, often rewriting entire speeches moments before filming them. Weird fact number 18. The series finale was lost for 20 years. The original series finale that aired in 1978 was somehow lost by CBS, and for 2 decades nobody could find a complete broadcast quality copy. When the show went into syndication, they had to use the second-to-last episode as the finale, because that's all they had. The actual finale featured Kojak considering retirement and included several emotional scenes with Crocker and Stavros that fans remembered but couldn't rewatch. Conspiracy theories emerged about why the episode disappeared, with some fans claiming it was deliberately destroyed because it was too dark or controversial. The truth was much more boring. A clerical error led to the master tape being labeled incorrectly, and it ended up in a warehouse with footage from completely different shows. In 1998, a CBS archivist doing inventory for a planned retrospective found the missing episode mislabeled as a Marcus Welby medical drama. When they finally aired it as part of a Kojak marathon, fans were disappointed to discover it wasn't particularly controversial or dark. It was just a standard bittersweet ending, where Kojak decides to stay on the force because he can't imagine doing anything else. Weird fact. Number 19. Telly Savalas' daughter appeared in multiple episodes playing different characters. Telly Savalas' daughter Catherine appeared in Kojak 7 different times, playing 7 completely different characters, and the producers hoped nobody would notice. She played various witnesses, victims, and suspects, sometimes showing up twice in the same season as different people. What makes this nepotism even stranger is that Catherine wasn't a particularly good actress in those early appearances. She'd freeze up on camera and blow takes constantly, but they kept casting her anyway. By her 6th appearance, fans started writing letters asking if the show knew they kept using the same actress, with some joking that maybe she was playing a master of disguise. The production tried to differentiate her characters by giving her different wigs and accents, but it was pretty obvious to anyone paying attention. Catherine later admitted in interviews that she was embarrassed by those appearances and that she'd only done them because her father pressured her to get experience. She eventually became a successful actress in her own right, but she refused to include any of her Kojak appearances on her resume because she found them unprofessional and cringeworthy. Weird fact number 20. The show. Accidentally created. Real NYPD policy changes. In a bizarre case of life imitating art, several Kojak episodes that depicted improved police procedures and suspect treatment actually influenced real NYPD policy changes. The show's writers would sometimes imagine better ways cops could handle situations, not realizing they were writing things that didn't actually happen in real departments. NYPD officials would watch the show and think, that's actually a good idea, then implement policies they'd seen on Kojak. One episode showed Kojak carefully documenting a crime scene with photographs from multiple angles, which wasn't standard procedure in 1974, but became mandatory policy by 1976, partly because the episode showed how useful it could be. Another episode depicted detectives being required to have a supervisor present during interrogations of juveniles, which wasn't an PD policy, but became one after the episode aired, and advocacy groups used it as an example of best practices. The writers found out about this and started deliberately writing in progressive police procedures, hoping they'd be adopted in real life, essentially using the show as a vehicle for police reform. It's ironic that a show born from a story about police corruption ended up improving actual police practices, even if only in small ways. Bonus. Weird fact. Telly Savalas hated bald jokes, but made millions from them. Anyway. Despite becoming famous for his bald head and supposedly being confident about it, Telly Savalas privately hated bald jokes and would get genuinely angry when talk show hosts or comedians made cracks about his appearance. He'd walk off interview sets if he felt the humor went too far. And he refused to appear on several comedy shows because he knew they'd make his baldness the centerpiece of jokes. Yet simultaneously, he licensed his image for all sorts of bald-related products and merchandise that made fun of his lack of hair. There were Kojak Halloween costumes that came with bald caps, comedy albums featuring bald jokes with his approval, even a board game called Who Loves Ya Baldy that he endorsed. Friends and colleagues couldn't understand this contradiction. He'd make millions off bald humor and merchandising, but would genuinely get offended by the same jokes in person. His ex-wife explained in a biography that Savalas' relationship with his baldness was complicated by childhood bullying, and while he'd learned to weaponize it professionally, it still touched a nerve personally. This weird dichotomy continued until his death in 1994, making him simultaneously the most famous bald man in entertainment and the most sensitive about jokes regarding his baldness.